You're listening to the AFTERBUZZ TV network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Keith. Johnson.
The AFTERBUZZ Studios in Los Angeles, California. Presented by Miriam Gonzalez and Bing.com and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies. This is AFTERBUZZ TV's 666 Park Avenue After Show. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. If you'd like to buzz in on tonight's show, you can buzz us at 424-256-1729. That's 424-256-1729. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show. It's AFTERBUZZ TV's 666 Park Avenue After Show.
Hey, 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 AFTERBUZZ followers and watchers and listeners. We are doing, Bing is for doing, and we are doing Season 1, Episode 7 of 666 Park Avenue. I'm Miriam Gonzalez, your host, with my lovely co-hosts,
Christine Archer.
And Grant Rutter, hello.
And tonight we have got quite an interesting storyline with many spooky twists and turns and
turns again.
You just never know what's going to happen with 666 Park Avenue. ABC, to me, is doing an amazing job with this. I know that initially it didn't have quite as strong of a following, but I feel that every week the episodes just keep getting better and better and better. And I did not expect to have happen what happened tonight.
Yeah, it was a big episode. I think there were at least a few different things that we're going to talk about that were kind of big points in the episode. And I think a good thing about this show is we didn't really see any new characters this week, I guess. But last week we saw a ton of new characters, and hopefully I think the storyline will keep progressing.
Some came, some went.
Well, that's okay, because we're more invested in these two. I don't need a new character every week. I we need to see what's happening with who's here. I mean, there's even Louise, who hasn't been on in the last 2 episodes. I'm still invested in her. So we don't need anyone new. We can hold off, and it's good enough right now. It's pretty good.
Well, we start we're going to start tonight with Brian and Alexis and Louise's storyline, and the fact that Brian is he hasn't been staying at their apartment, and we find that out tonight because we didn't see them last week in the episode. He hasn't been staying there. He's actually been staying with a friend, and he decides to go back to the apartment to just get a few of his things because he's a writer. And sure as can be, who's in his apartment but Alexis, only to find out that Louise is in Miami and she's, working in Miami right now, and Alexis is just kind of coming by to get some stuff to send to her. And Alexis is very devious, we find out in this episode. Extremely devious.
She's a little seductress.
I think she is yet another one of Gavin's puppets in this whole thing. Mm-hmm. The fact that we find out tonight that, with Louise being gone, Brian is now questioning her loyalty to their marriage and if she's even cheated on him. And this is all based on a text message. Mm-hmm. And, when he sees Alexis in the apartment for, was it the second time? He said, and I thought last week she gave him back the key.
I don't remember.
I thought she gave Brian back the key, I'm not going to come in without knocking kind of a thing. And all of a sudden, she seems to be just appearing in the apartment. And so...
Do they even have locks on these doors? Everyone's in and out of these apartments. In and out. I was just saying that during the episode. That would really piss me off to have those candles lit in my apartment and walk into that.
Yeah.
Stay out of my room. I have that problem right now anyway, please, in my own apartment.
No, she just keeps appearing into the apartment, and to a point where she knows that he is obsessed with her to a certain degree. But it's from a distance. When she's in her apartment in the window and he's watching her, it's more of a fantasy, yes. I feel. But when she's up close, it's hard for him to kind of dive in there and just kind of go for it. One, because he loves his wife. But the fact that Louise keeps showing up and now, Alexis keeps showing up and Louise isn't around in the picture, and now he's doubting the relationship. The temptation gets a lot steamier tonight, where Brian and Alexis actually hook up.
Well, she looks like a young Rebecca Romaine, and I think Rebecca Romaine's beautiful. So
You're a big Alexis fan, huh?
She's stunning, and she's such a seductress, and you can tell she just put her hand on his chest, and the shirt was off. So, I mean, she's got something.
She's got the power of the vajayjay going on, that's for sure. And so she got what she wanted, but she tricked Brian into being with her. And we find out later on in the episode when they're in the elevator again, and she's like, "Aren't you happy to see me?" and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, "No." And it's all based on the interaction that he has with Dr. Evans shortly prior to that scene where they're in the elevator, and he finds out that Alexis stole Dr. Evans' phone and was the one that actually texts Louise, "Come to my apartment," which is the text that Brian saw that was making him question Louise in the first place. So I think that this storyline has a lot more to go with it.
I was a little surprised to see, because I think that Brian is very much in love with Louise, and he kind of tells Alexis that when they're in the elevator. But then in the previews for next week, we obviously see that this thing between Alexis and Brian is not ending anytime soon. And now that she's also living in the Drake, which she told us at the very end, I think that'll be interesting as well, because she's like right down the hall from them, basically.
I'm glad it's not over, especially over a text message. I mean, I would hope that he could get past that.
Well,
I don't know who I'm rooting for with them, but I like Alexis.
She has the power of seduction on her side, and like I said, I think that she is one of the puppets in Gavin's. There's a reason why he's being tempted. There's a reason why all of this is happening. The one thing that I've realized with this show is all based around things that you want and can't have, but somehow will do anything for. And when it comes into fruition, that's when things get sticky. And that's when the Drake turns into the very creepy, spooky place that it is. And that, because Brian has that temptation for Alexis, and he always had, it's now happening, but there's a price to be paid. And the price is either his marriage, which, who knows? We'll get into predictions when it comes to Alexis and Brian and Louise and the doctor and what's going to happen next. But I think that we're going to see a lot more of their characters and a lot more compromises happening.
And I think something that you kind of said before that's interesting about the show, it's almost seems like it's kind of based around the 7 deadly sins in a way. We have like greed, which we see with the doctor, and maybe now we're going to be seeing lust with Alexis is another one. So we'll see. I don't know.
Absolutely. Go to iTunes and download us on iTunes. It only takes about 5 seconds. In fact, there's this really cool app, which I, the other day, was playing with. There's an iPod app if you have an iPod or whatever your smartphone is, and, podcast app. And you download and you get to like kind of organize your different podcasts that you like to listen to. And so I found myself listening back to the previous hosts' recaps and then ours as well, just to get an idea. So we want to know what you think. Where do you feel like these storylines are going? Download us, comment, rate. If we're your favorite show, let us know. If you have others, I mean, there's so many shows that you can watch and listen to. Well, listen to on iTunes, but watch here on AfterBuzzTV.com. You've got Boardwalk Empire, Homeland, American Horror Story, Happy Endings, X Factor, the ever so famous Scandal, which everyone is just obsessed with, and Glee, which I love. Go and download the different shows, rate, comment, tell us what you think, especially with this storyline with Alexis. Also, there is the AfterBlogs that we're interested in finding out your input as well. Go to AfterBuzzTV.com/ AfterBlogs and tell us what you think. We're really interested, because I know for me, we've gotten some comments and some rates, and with how these storylines are going, I'm curious to see what's going to happen next, and we love your input. So
yes, and I have been looking at the comments, and they've been nice and positive, so we thank you all for that.
Yeah, thank you.
But we've sat here and gave our theories last week, and so our viewers were not shy about giving their theories, and 2 popped out to me, and really quick, I just want to go over them. I know I will butcher this, but Eon Long, I believe his name is Devin, his comment said that if it's true ABC bought 2 more scripts on top of the first season, then they might be preparing to at least give a 2 2-hour finale wrap-up of the show if it's going to end after a single season. Of course, we don't know if it's going to end, but I thought this was kind of a good thought, because if they do extend it 2 episodes, they could give it a 2-hour wrap-up finale to kind of tie everything together.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked. Just by looking at ratings, but we'll see. And in regards to theories, Dringle2, an iTunes listener, wrote, prediction: Tony is the gas mask killer, the concierge.
Yes, I saw that. I didn't even think of that.
I know. He said he was gone from the party when the killer appeared and was by the safe when it was opened. As far as the noose goes, I guess he did it and kicked away the chair himself when Gavin came in not to suspect him. So maybe he's more than a little henchman. And maybe he's more than a henchman. Maybe he's got an agenda himself.
I hope not. I like Tony.
Yeah.
I don't want to think that the doorman's that guilty, but...
Oh, everyone, there's a possibility of guilt across the board when it comes to
Fair
this.
game.
And the Drake is just, it is just a mystery to be unlocked one door at a time. That's how I feel. Behind every door, there's a story. Behind every person, there's a story. And, you know, Dr. Evans, for instance, you know, we saw him last week. He was given the $50,000 for his gambling debt. Also, thank you to those who commented on iTunes. We appreciate you saying that it was $50,000 that was etched into his chest. I mean, and as we saw in this episode, it went up another 10 grand.
1,000.
It went up another 10 grand, and it's kind of, he's starting to regret his decision, and it's becoming very obvious. We find out that when Kadinsky gets taken to the hospital, that he sews a scalpel into his body. And the fact that how gangster was that when Kadinsky was laying there and pushed that thing out of his stomach? I was freaking out. I'm like,
Me too. I had to look away for a hot second. I mean, the most gruesome scene of the series so far. If you haven't seen it, double check, because it was a pretty good scene.
Yeah, I mean, he pulls it out of his body. He starts screaming. The cop comes over. He stabs him in the neck. All of a sudden, 2 people are dead as a result of this, because Dr. Evans' mission and goal was to get Kadinsky out of the hospital, and that was the way to do it. And now he's feeling guilty because he's like, I have the blood of 2 dead people on my hands now. And that's the price you pay.
Gavin's right, though. Like, how could he not have known that when he sewed that into his stomach, that was the purpose of it? Obviously, he was going to kill someone with it. He didn't just sew it in there for no reason.
I think that he didn't want to believe it.
That's true. What do you think?
He's kind of stupid.
Yeah, I feel like he didn't want to believe what he was actually doing. You know, like, you just kind of like get caught in the moment kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But for him to, this is the price that he has to pay now. He's got, you know, he puts the scalpel in his stomach. Kadinsky goes and does what he does. Now he's feeling guilty. He gets back to the hotel, which is when the confrontation between him and Brian happens, and he finds out the truth. And then you see him go into his apartment getting ready for the evening, and he decides to bring a gun with him. His mission now is to kill Gavin as a result of all of this craziness that's happened. And now Gavin, the puppet master, people have said maybe he's not the evil one. I beg to differ. He to me is like, he's the man running the show, and that's very obvious. His storyline is the one that is definitely him and Jane. There's a connection. There's some sort of correlation between the 2 of them. And he, this evening in this episode, had so many different things going on. Kadinsky, for one, when he gets out of the hospital, is in his penthouse with him, and he sends Kadinsky, the mission for you this evening or today is to kill Victor Shaw. And Victor Shaw, he's really something else, trying to play Olivia against Gavin. And Gavin's very aware of it. And Olivia, because I think Victor Shaw is clueless to how involved Olivia really is, I feel that he's setting himself up, which we saw that tonight.
Yeah.
He feels that she doesn't know what's going on when she really does.
I wish I knew how much Olivia actually knew, because I think she obviously does know the big stuff. She knows what's inside that box. We found that out last week. But I wonder how much she knows about Gavin's little individual plans with people within the Drake. And I think maybe, to an extent, I think she does know, but also I think she doesn't necessarily have to play dumb, because she really doesn't know a lot of the little things that Gavin's doing, I think. At least, maybe she does. I don't know. But I feel like she doesn't really.
I have a question for the two of you. Olivia, is she a regular person like Jane and Henry, or is she of her husband's type? Because she put on that lipstick and she wasn't falling to the floor, and she had it all over her lips, whereas opposed to Shaw, I mean, he just had a taste and it was out. It was
I was
lights
very
out.
confused by that too. I'm not sure what was going on and how she avoided whatever effect the lipstick had.
I think that she too has sold her soul and is protected because she's on Gavin's side. If you notice, a lot of the characters, the only time they lose their lives or lose something, disappear or whatever the case may be, is anytime you want to go against Gavin. And we see that with all the characters throughout the weeks in the different storylines. Anytime you go against Gavin, you're done. And so because she's on his side, she's not going anywhere. And that's why I think she's protected when they're at the symphony benefit and they're sitting in there in the reception area. And at first I was like kind of thrown by him saying, she's like, hey, our guest is here. And he's like, I'm very aware of that, about Victor Shaw. And he's like, you need more lipstick. I'm like, well, that's kind of a rude thing to say to a girl. Little do we know that down the road, the lipstick has poison inside of it. And it comes back full circle where Victor Shaw feels as if Gavin has spiked his champagne that Olivia is bringing to him. And instead, he tests Olivia's loyalty and is like, all right, well, who are you truly loyal to? Show me. And she goes and she kisses him to show that, oh yeah, I'm on your side, which that was deception to begin with because the lip gloss was poisoned.
She knew exactly what she was doing too. They both did.
Whatever Olivia is, she's certainly not immortal because that car was gunning for her a few weeks ago, and it really was a threat. So she's not completely immortal whether she's under four wheels or not.
No, of course.
So she's something, but she's not immortal, but she's
protected.
I think when she's like within the Drake, like she was in this episode, that since Gavin controls everything, and I mean, even Gavin said earlier in the episode, I think he said the best part, when he was talking to Henry, he said the best part of who we are is the women that we love, talking about Jane and Olivia, obviously.
Yeah.
And then said, like, we do anything we can to make them happy and to protect them, basically.
Absolutely. And he absolutely protects her. And in fact, it's interesting that you bring that conversation up because to me, there was something that he had said that really got me. And it was, he says to him, he's like, we are weak without the women that we love. We are weak without them. In other words, he needs Olivia to help get him through the situations, help keep Jane here. And we see that when they're at the, when Henry goes and gets that award from the mayor, the honor for saving, saving the mayor's life and that instance in the party a few weeks back. And so he gets honored and he's sitting there talking with Gavin, and Olivia goes and pulls Jane aside, and all of a sudden, opportunity is presented. And Olivia's like, hey, by the way, they're looking for a new architect, and I suggested you. I feel that Jane has constantly brought everyone in the Drake, they're faced with choices. And you can go and make a good choice or a bad choice. But in these cases, these choices are so tempting, it's hard to turn them down because, like, for instance, with Henry going and pursuing the mayor's office, Jane getting the opportunity to become, the architect of a project in New York City. These are great opportunities, but there's a price that goes attached to them. And I feel like Olivia is the wrangler of these situations for Gavin. Because the minute that Gavin finds out that Jane wants to leave, he's like, whatever it takes, we need to keep them both here.
He clearly has plans, I think, for both Jane and for Henry.
Absolutely. And I think it all stems down to Jane's past, but we'll get into that a little bit later because it's so funny how everyone is somewhat connected. But it was really interesting when Henry, after or before the party, and was it after the mayor's thing where they're sitting down in the penthouse and he goes to Gavin for advice, and that's when he says we do whatever we need to do to keep the women that we love happy. and he suggests, I think you should propose.
That was such a crazy idea to me. Literally, that's such a, no offense, such a boy thing to do, because it's like she threatens to basically say, I'm leaving you, which, I mean, she says, she's like, I don't want you to have to leave your job because that's important to you. So I think that's fair on Jane's part. But then she's basically threatening to leave him. And then, of course, you know, Henry's reaction is to be like, let me just go propose to her right away. I don't know. I feel like,
Well, it's a plot point, too. I mean,
it is, but I don't know.
feel that she's wanting to leave because she's scared, not because she wants to leave him. And she understands how much he loves his job and how far he's come along in such a short amount of time that she doesn't want to ruin that for him. Nobody wants somebody to resent them for making them make a choice against their will. But him proposing to her is just a sign like, hey, I love you and together we'll be fine. And so that's kind of what I felt was happening with Gavin's advice. Like, there's nothing that we can't do together. Like, if you guys stay together, there's nothing that can happen if you stay together. And that's what I feel he was pushing, and that's what convinced him to go for it. And it was really funny when Henry and Brian were jogging together after he gets this grand old talk from Gavin on propose to her, get married, all this kind of stuff. And Henry's like, Brian's like, marriage is overrated, things change. And he's like, oh my God, dude, I'm totally going to propose tonight.
Yeah.
He's like, ooh, insert open mouth, insert foot. That's how I felt it went down.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Brian being in the situation that he's in, I kind of get where he's coming from. And I see what you're saying, too, about how Henry really does love Jane, obviously, and doesn't want her to leave. And I guess it could kind of be just a sign of saying, hey, if you stay, like, we'll get through this. When I saw it at first, though, it was kind of just like, this seems like a prime opportunity to kind of keep Jane here and lock her in, basically, and she won't have a choice but to leave. I don't know.
Oh, there's the motive for sure.
Yeah.
That's the clearest, most obvious. But we don't know the real motive why those two have to be together. There's definitely a bigger picture there, so.
Absolutely. And we learn in this episode that that Jane is now known as a child of the Drake. And when it was initially in the beginning, you see the little girl in past episodes, and we guess that that's the grandmother because of the charm and, you know, the family heirloom, which today, this episode really freaked me out with where it went. But the fact is Lottie, who is, we find out, is Nona's grandmother, who has been silenced for God knows how many years at this point. She finally she has a flashback of 1998?
Yes.
I think so.
It was a flashback of 1998 when Nona was in her mother Melanie's belly. And something happened during that time that when Lottie was actually in 1998 speaking, and she's talking to Melanie, she's like, whatever it takes, you keep that baby, you keep out of the Drake, this place isn't safe. And you can see that Melanie has a genuine concern for Lottie. There's something, either Lottie was digging too deep like Jane is doing, or she sold her soul in a certain way as well, where that's yet to be determined, what the story is behind Lottie. But we find out that she gets up, she goes and she walks down the hallway, which freaks Nona out. It's like, whoa, Grandma hasn't spoke or gotten out of that wheelchair in how long? And now all of a sudden she's like wandering the hallways. And that's just, I think, the spirit of the Drake that's coming out and her connection to Jane. And I almost want to feel like maybe Lottie may have been friends with Jane's grandmother.
That could be.
Back in the day.
They need some tie to that generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that may be the case. And so, you know, Lottie goes and says to Nona, like, hey, in her few words that she says, keep Jane here. And that scares the bejesus out of freaking Nona, because she's like, what's that all about? But I thought it was interesting that Nona dove into Jane's dream.
Yes.
That was very strange. I'll be interested to see. I have to be honest, I thought Nona at first was a ghost. The first few episodes of the show, because she didn't really talk to anyone. She kind of just did her own thing, and she only talked to Jane. So I thought that there was some sort of like supernatural connection between her and Jane. So now that I know she's a real person, I guess I have different feelings on it. But I'll be interested to see kind of how their relationship develops, because we saw today how they kind of became more friends. And
Yeah.
before it's been more just like, oh, Nona stops Jane in the hallway, they talk, they go along. But today you saw kind of now that they have this connection, being that they're both children from the Drake, I think it'll be interesting to see how their relationship progresses in the next few episodes.
And Lottie's done a research, and her granddaughter's not far behind with keeping it all. I mean, for a nice big New York closet, you don't see those. And they have a lot of research, and that's going to come into play too, which I'm just really anxious to see how that's all going to happen. That was probably the most interesting part for me, versus, of course, the end as well, but we'll get there.
Well, in predictions, I definitely have a feeling on how it all ties in, so I'll get into that in predictions. Yeah, but I feel like with all the stuff that Lottie has accumulated over the years, and now Nona has kept track, she knows kind of what's the history of the Drake. And so when she goes and she shows Jane, because in Jane's dream, Nona obviously appears and says, you know, you're special just like I am. We're the children of the Drake. And she sees the little girl running back and forth in the lobby. And she's like, who is that little girl? Now, first of all, for me, I'm like, how could you not recognize yourself as a child?
Right, that was weird. I was wondering that later, too.
I mean, it was a clear shot in the picture as well.
Well, and that's where I feel like there's some sort of, maybe her memory was erased or something's off. Like,
well, this is a girl who doesn't even know her grandmother's maiden name, right? Because the grandmother supposedly grew up in that place. Like, she didn't recognize the name in the newspaper, you know?
Maybe she changed it.
That's true. I forget that anything is possible.
No, weird things happen.
Yeah, weird things, strange things happen at the Drake all the time. And maybe because of the association, she didn't want to keep the last name because it's like, oh, you're a Kramer kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for the sake of not being ridiculed as a child or an adult and separating herself from the situation, there's a lot of possibilities that could have happened with Jane's grandmother. And
as long as it really is Jane and not a doppelganger. Oh, Lord. I don't know if we need two Janes
going a
running
whole
around.
different direction.
no, I don't think it's anything like that.
Yeah, no, I hope not. I'm used to soaps where things are just kind of whatever sticks. So.
Yeah, no, I don't think that that's the case with this. I feel that that there's going to be a lot of things revealed, but I feel that there was some sort of memory, selective memory. You know, sometimes people suppress things that they don't want to remember.
Yeah.
And for all we know, Jane could have had an experience as a little girl at the Drake, being the curious person that she is. And that's her big downfall, is the fact that she's so curious.
And she kind of, when she was in the creepy laundry room at the end and she saw the eye, she recognized, she was like, I remember this. I assume meaning from when she was a child and she was there the first time, maybe.
No.
Did she just mean like the first time when she was older?
No, the first time she went into into the basement in the first episode, and she's looking at the mosaic, and she's like, wow, she's fascinated by it because she's into architecture and all that kind of stuff. So when she sees it, naturally, it doesn't click to her what it is, but she if it wasn't for Nona's grandmother going down to the basement, wandering down to the basement, and how they went down there, how she wandered down there and just.
Well, she was the one who took the necklace and showed her. Like, she didn't show her physically, but she was the one who brought it to her attention that she revealed that the necklace is more than just her grandmother's.
Right.
Look.
Yeah, and the way she did it, too, it was like, I mean, this woman doesn't speak or do anything. She's, like, ripping the chain off of her, and she brings it to her eye, and she's like, you know, and then that's when they start to put two and two together. And she realizes that the symbol on the necklace is the part of the floor.
Mosaic.
And how creepy when she goes and brushes it off and they go and put it in to have the entire floor open up. Now, I don't know about you, but I was like, Jane, don't go down the stairs. Jane, don't go down the stairs.
Of course she goes
Please,
down the
Jane,
stairs.
don't go down the stairs.
I was kind of stuck, to be honest. I don't know if anyone else was with me, but I was kind of stuck on the special effects of the floor. I don't mean to be technical, but it kind of took me out of it. I mean, I'm sure on paper it sounded fabulous, but to me it was kind of like, wait, what is this? The special effects were just kind of in the middle for me.
No,
but whatever.
I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel that way at all. I felt like it was how the floor opened up was how you would imagine it supernaturally happening, almost like a puzzle kind of thing. like in Lord of the Rings. Is it Lord of the Rings or in Harry Potter when the stairs change
Harry Potter.
and you go in different directions?
I understand budgets are different. I do, but it just didn't do it for me. But I mean, the story holds up.
Well, the fact that the floor opened up and she decides to take a walk down the stairs, I mean, hello, if it opened up, it will close. Just saying.
I some weeks sit here and want to yell at the TV screen because Jane, it's like when she's asleep in her bed and she hears the noise coming from downstairs. Why would you go downstairs? Honestly, stay in your bed, go to sleep.
Well, she's curious. That's her downfall.
It's the problem, exactly. And for someone who wants to get out of the Drake so badly and is like about to just leave for Indiana in like, a 24-hour period, like, she clearly doesn't want to leave that badly because, the second something like cool happens that she says, like, I think I'm supposed to do this, like I'm supposed to be here right now. And she just like wanders on down to the stairs. Of course something bad is going to happen.
Well, I feel that because if it wasn't for Nona coming to Jane wouldn't have had a change of heart. And you can see that when they're at the symphony, her and Henry are at the symphony reception, that you can see she has a change of heart. She's like, she's lost without him, and he says the same, and you see a real connection between the two of them. And I know that in the past we predicted that something would bring them further and further apart. I didn't feel that was happening in this episode. In fact, I feel that because Nona went to Jane and explained things and showed her the picture of her as a little girl in 1992 and showed her all the past and all of the things that she started to figure out, she's starting to realize, like, you know what, I shouldn't be going anywhere, and I've got my man here. He has my back. He doesn't think I'm totally crazy. He knows something's up, but he believes her. Yeah. And we see that in the very beginning when they're getting ready to go to the honoring of him, in the whole mayor situation. But I feel that she finally realizes, like, hey, I need to stay here. And that's why when she goes down those stairs, she feels like, this is what I need to be doing. Little does she know, the floor closes up, and now she's going to be gone, we'll make some predictions in a few minutes regarding all of that.
I'll be very interested to see what happens with Jane on the stairs and if she gets out in the next episode. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a fear of mine, getting trapped under a floor like that. I don't know, that freaked me out a little bit. I don't know.
Well, I feel actually worse for Henry at this point. She made the choice to go down the stairs. Here he is waiting upstairs for her. I mean, and yes,
Poor
I
guy.
get you with Olivia going in and putting all the candles in, although if it was me, and this is where I get a little chick on you, if it was me and my guy was proposing to me, I would hope that he would have one of his friends go hook up the place like that. So when we came back, it would be like, oh my God, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but wouldn't it mean more if the guy did it himself than to have someone else
Well,
do
you
it?
can't have, a guy can't do that. If it's a
gone.
surprise and you guys are out, like you two are out and about, you can't go and light candles and have them burning for hours.
Yeah.
That's
I
kind
get
of a
the
dangerous thing.
I get the candles, but
Plus, I feel like that's Olivia's specialty is that sort of thing.
Yes.
And
She has that
Henry
touch.
knows that.
I don't want anyone in my apartment. Ugh.
I mean,
like that.
to me, I think
out.
it was a very romantic gesture, and we find that once the floor closes up, he's sitting there now in the dark. The ghost, whatever the Drake is, it rattles the building, to say the least, and all the candles blow out and the lights go out, and he's just kind of sitting there in the dark waiting for Jane, and Jane now is being eaten up by the floor.
Mm-hmm. And we see from the preview for the next episode that Henry goes around putting flyers up everywhere that says she's been gone for 36 hours now. So I guess she's not coming out anytime too soon, but
I think a lot's going to be revealed in what's going to happen what she's going to find under there, what she's going to learn about herself, and I guess we'll make those in predictions. But let's get to some news and gossip.
AfterBuzz TV News.
All right, so we can discuss the ratings for a hot second. The show is received, it plummeted to a series low last week, unfortunately, from Seattle PI. It garnered a 4.1 million rating, and it started off, I believe, at a 7 or an 8, and now an 18 to 49, it is a 1.4, so we're just keeping an eye on those ratings. The word plummeted is a little dramatic, I mean, but it's unfortunate that it's not doing as well as we enjoy. Mercedes Machon, I believe that's her last name. She plays Louise on the show. She sat down with an interview with TVFanatic.com, and she talks about how the actors are in the dark with future stories. We mentioned this last week with Terry O'Quinn when he was on The View. She says, I love not knowing for me personally because everything is a discovery. I love the idea that we're kept in the dark a little. That being said, I want to know about my past, so they were really great at painting exactly what led me to the Drake. That really was so helpful as an actor to step inside the skin. I can't imagine getting one of these scripts and having to play one of these stories, one of the many stories, and not really knowing where it's going.
I think that's the good thing about them not knowing. It's the element of surprise and the true reaction to what winds up going down. You know, it's authentic, I feel. And I mean, I wouldn't want to know. It's kind of like discussing the show before we get in here.
Yeah,
it kind of ruins it. And then we're like, well, we kind of already talked about it, so the enthusiasm is gone. Actually, Rachel Taylor, who plays Jane Van Veen, did an interview with Crave Online, and she discusses her character and says that in all the roles that she's played in the past, this character, she kind of plays more of herself than in any of the other. She gets to be more of who she really is. And she's a very, very hot Australian actress, which
Yes.
I think it's interesting. Like tonight I'm looking at her now knowing that she's Australian. I'm like, she kind of looks like Nicole Kidman a little.
A little bit.
I can
yeah.
see
Just a little bit. But she says, she starts getting into the character of Jane, and she said that she worked a lot with the director and asking a lot of questions regarding not so much the storyline, but who the character of Jane is. And it's the fact that she's very positive and optimistic, but at the same time, she's also very isolated, and she lives a very solitary life. And then she's also very proactive as well. So she's got a lot of depth going on with her character, even though I know today you were like, she's so plain. Plain Jane's got a lot going on, and we're going to learn that, I feel, more as the storyline goes on because of her connection to the Drake. She also discussed the Jane's downfall, which we spoke of earlier, her curious nature. And the cool thing is that she said not everybody at the Drake gets sucked into the walls, which I thought was great. You know, everyone gets sucked into the walls or down into the floor. She said that also the really cool thing is the intro of the new cast members each week. She said she really loves that part of it and that it's really great to have that. So it was nice to have her perspective as well.
Yeah, it sounds like a good interview.
Yeah, it was really cool to read.
Where was that from again?
Crave Online.
I'll have to look it up.
Absolutely.
So Mercedes went on to discuss some predictions in her interviews. That's interesting. She says, we definitely learned a lot about the characters' pasts. You'll start seeing a lot of relationships challenge. That's really a theme, is the relationships here. Everyone is going to be sort of pushed to their brink to see how their relationships are. On top of that, there's going to be a surprise that happens. Let's just say that something's going to happen to the Durans that's going to throw them both completely off, and we don't learn about this until about episode 9, I believe, which is coming up. She goes on to say, which is what we're shooting now. This is a week old. She says, I remember reading it and gasping, and then, of course, I had to call up Buckley and Helena and Rachel and everyone and go, oh my God, what do you guys think? It really threw me off, so I can imagine the audiences being like, you're kidding. I did not see that coming. So
And this was episode 9, you said? So 2 more episodes.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Stay with the show, guys.
Just keeps getting interesting.
Yeah.
With that being said, let's get into some predictions.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
Okay, let's start with the characters of Brian, Alexis, and Louise. What do you guys think is going to happen with them?
I think Brian is going to become addicted to Alexis, and I just think it's going to get more and more out of control. And Louise is going to come home from Miami to a surprise. But yeah, I definitely think that she's just beginning. I think Alexis is just beginning.
I agree. And I think that somehow Gavin is going to see kind of how that relationship is forming. And I have a feeling that Brian's going to pay some sort of price for that as well.
He's the puppet.
He is.
I agree with you guys. Alexis and Brian are gonna have quite a steamy thing going on. I feel like maybe Louise is gonna walk in on them, or Gavin might use it against Brian, like, hey, by the way, see the new hot piece of you're working with, and
A sex tape? Could there be
there could be a sex tape. There could be there's all kinds of possibilities that could happen, especially with Gavin and in the Drake, and the fact that Alexis now lives in the Drake, how that happened,
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Okay, so with Gavin and Olivia, what do you guys think is going to happen?
I think that box is gonna come back. I read, and this is not a spoiler, but I think that box is like a Pandora's box for everyone. I think that box is gonna really turn the whole show on its head. Just when Jane is about to figure more stuff out, I think then it's just gonna change everything.
Okay.
I think Olivia is going to continue to become more and more involved in the whole thing and be a bigger part of Gavin's plan.
I see Olivia being more. I know you've been wanting to see Vanessa Williams' character evolve from this victim-esque person,
Yes.
but I feel like she's going to now start to come out and be, the devil's wife, so to speak, and it's going to be interesting. The character, she's going to become a lot stronger and stronger, and Gavin is just going to use that. They're a power couple. They're a power couple, and they're going to do this together, and they're going to keep whatever's going on at the Drake as quiet and as secret as possible, and they're just going to keep manipulating people. Jane, Nona, Jane and Henry and Nona and Lottie. What do you guys think?
Honestly, I'm not sure about those guys. I think Henry and Jane will stay together. I see that working out, and I have a feeling that Lottie is going to play a bigger role in the next few episodes as well.
Well, I read a spoiler regarding what Jane is going to be doing underneath the mosaic. I don't want to spoil it for anyone. Yeah, so I won't say anything. But I think
That's what
it'll
we're
be
here
interesting.
for. Spoilers.
Do you want to say? No, I won't ruin it.
You're going to keep it to yourself? All right, fine. You're going to have to spoil it next week.
All right, sounds good.
But I think I think Jane and Henry, yes, they're going to wind up staying together. They're going to get a stronger bond together. And I feel that Nona and Lottie are going to really play a big role in Jane staying at the Drake and learning what's going on with the history behind Jane and her grandmother and her great-grandfather, Peter Kramer. And I feel like the more Jane finds out, I don't know, maybe she becomes a stronger character as far as a key player in the Drake and the history of it.
Well, for what I know, it's all about the pasts, and it's all going to be creeping up on everyone, and some questions will be answered coming up, so.
Are we defined by our pasts? Let us know. Go to iTunes and rate, comment, download us. It only takes about 5 seconds. Tell a friend.
And send some of your theories, too. I like reading them. If they're good, we'll bring them up.
I absolutely love it. You can tweet us. You can tweet me at Miriam L. Gonzalez. Where can they find you guys?
At C. Archer.
At Grant Michael R on Twitter.
And we will be back here
2 weeks, actually.
In 2 weeks with episode 8, and I'm so looking forward to it. We'll see you guys next time here on AfterBuzz TV.
From Bing.com, executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.